council about 4 years, Claire, would that be right? So I'm not going to, you've seen the little bio, but the thing about Claire is that we've worked really closely with her over the last year, especially since COVID and lockdown. And I think she's got a story to tell us now today. And Claire, over to you.
Okay, thank you. So, Helen, did you want to magically make the screen happen? Thank you for that. I'm useless at that bit. I really appreciate you doing that. Huge thanks. So what I thought I would do today, it's a year since I last came to the Clare Foundation's Charity Leaders Forum, and I do remember having just started my job, and what a year it's been. I feel like I've aged 10 years, and I don't want anything in the chat bar. I know that you know me well. Don't put any comments in the chat bar about it. It's been a roller coaster of a year, and certainly when I first came to talk to you, it was quite theoretical about the new council and what the service would be. It's not anymore, and it's changed and it's morphed in time. So I thought I'd just do a quick look at the year, what it's been for the Localities service. I know that lots of you will be interested in our community board journey. Community safety is new to me, so again I'll explain that more about the service there, the VCS Recovery Board, but I have some time to look at what the priorities are going to be for us as a team next year. And for me, I know that you don't, the value in these meetings are that you haven't got someone talking endlessly. I know that what we've all really valued is that collaboration and discussion piece. So I will try and keep it brief in terms of the outline that I've got, and then we can stop sharing the screen. You'll be relieved, Helen, and we can sort of see everyone and just have a general chat. So that's the plan for today. Lovely to be part of this and to speak to you all. I know that I see quite a lot of familiar faces. That's lovely. Helen, do you want to go to the first slide? So I'm not going to go through every single point on here, but for me, it's been a real roller coaster of a year. And I think you don't really measure the year in terms of seasons, or it's all merged into one. And I've lurched from one lockdown to the next. That's how I'm measuring my year in terms of lockdowns now. And because we're working from home as well, you've got life happening around you. So working from home, I think other people are monitoring my life through which room I'm in. I'm doing up an old house. So I literally room hop every time a new damp patch arrives or a new rendering, plaster needs to be pulled up. So I'm in a slightly different room. So apologies for the very bizarre background. I don't think you can quite see the windows and doors that are stacked up. And the other thing in terms of my life is that other people are monitoring it through flowers. So I've always got flowers on my desk. So I can sense, even though I'm at my desk for long hours, the year is going by, but I've either got tulips or daffodils or roses, or so it's been quite interesting to measure the year in those terms. I came to speak to you this time last year, and I was very, very new. So I was part of the induction. I had a very nice time going to see Durham, going to speak to people. It was all very theoretical. And then lockdown happened and just rocked our world completely. I will be forever grateful for the support that I had. So right at the very beginning of lockdown, it was chaotic for everybody. But I had one phone call that said, "What do you need? What do you need from us as the VCS?" And I remember kind of going, "I don't know." And someone going, "It's all right, it's okay." So Martin was there, "It's all right, we'll be there, we'll be there." And the next day, there were 10 brilliant minds around the table willing to work with the council. It didn't matter that we didn't know, we were just in it together and we would find a way through it together. And I can't tell you how much I just sincerely value that, and I think that will stay with me forever. What's been nice as well is that people have checked in. So over the time, people have kind of gone, "How about this? How about that?" and chipped in ideas, because they know that we haven't got the answers, and they know that we can't do it on our own. So it is around that collaboration piece. So the first lockdown, hugely critical. We moved from me talking about what might the service do to emergency cells. And I realise when you're a new service director, very, very new, it's a new role for me, you move into emergency cells, it's really directive. You have all of a sudden 120 people on the call that have been pulled right across all of the council, all over the place, because they've bothered to put their hand up and say, "I'll help, what do you need?" So you don't know who you're talking to, you've got no connection with them, and you've got to be quite rapid. It's every day, 9 o'clock, I need you to do this within an hour, bang, 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 bang. And that's a learning curve in itself, but extremely challenging when you don't know people. That emergency cell situation really worked, and really brought the council together. So you've got 5 councils tipping into one. We haven't got there yet because we're still in March, but it's about everybody working together and then being able to say, you need to have a relationship with so-and-so, quick, get the relationships done. So it forged the relationships in record time, I think. We hadn't had the luxury of having our COVID, of having community boards yet. That would have been lovely if we'd have established that model. So we brought in area coordinators, and again, very grateful for staff that were, oh, sorry, Helen, if you can just go back, I'll get quicker at talking, I promise. So we had area coordinators pulled in, and again, the significance for me is that you've got data protection officers suddenly being community workers. And with that goes the responsibility of getting them to be a team, but making sure that their welfare is looked after as well. You spend years, I've worked in community services and children's services for years, and you get used to some of the calls. You've got a data protection officer making a call for the first time, very, very worried about the welfare of an individual, to the fact that we had to send the fire brigade round in the end to push down a door and check that they're okay. That's really significant. So people are taking on different roles and responsibilities, and the weight of that, the response in the pandemic. So everybody has worked all sorts of hours. Vesting day came and went, if I'm really honest. We were already working together. It was just another day. Somebody popped up in the chat bar, happy vesting day. I was like, I completely forgot that we'd formed a new council, this huge thing that we'd all been waiting for. And actually what everybody was focused on is just what needs to be done. Let's get help where it's needed. We had very good relationships with town and parish councils, and we were making sure that we were forging good relationships with them. And all of a sudden you needed to have conversations. So we've got 171 town and parish councils, and the clerks' roles are really important. So all of a sudden we're having to do 3 or 4 times a week clerk calls, telephone calls, where we're just troubleshooting, because people are asking questions. Can I close my playgrounds? Can I open my playgrounds? How do I get PPE? So the sheer volume of questions coming round, I think, was really significant for us. Food parcels, we had a conversation where the government announced, you will be getting a food parcel, make sure that you've got enough space, enough buildings, you can distribute it. Just huge logistical challenges. At the same time, you're really aware we're in emergency mode, but I need to set up a new team. I had 5 people that TUPE'd over on vesting day, only 5. Everyone else has got these fantastic services where they're all pulled in and they've got great staff. I'm hugely grateful to those that were willing to volunteer, but we had to employ really quickly 3 team managers just to be able to get on the ground. And I don't know how they've done it. They came in with the attitude of, we're in it together, let's just get on with it. Martin and I recruited together for those online. It's really tough interviewing online, so I feel for those posts. They're really flexible, so they've had to start a new job and set up a service from scratch without that much help from me, I have to say, because I've been distracted by 1,000,001 other things. So that team have had to create job descriptions, create a culture, create a huge induction pack. That's really big, that's huge. So again, in terms of their learning, they've had to be everything and anything, and it's only now that we can begin to say, stop doing that, so-and-so can do that role. So they're still being flexible. They've got to be able to be reactive and go, okay, we tried that doesn't work, now what? So again, there's lots of unknowns that were happening, and people just willing to go with it, go with the flow. Shielding is another one on the screen. So if I lurch from lockdown to lockdown, but shielding stands out for me. Every time there's a government announcement, we would have a new shielding list, and that would come through to us as a data call. We've now got 30,000 people in Buck shielding. And to show you how it changes, 6,000 came through last week. So the figures are going up and down constantly. When somebody is shielding, we have a responsibility. A letter goes to them to say, your council will be in contact with you. So we need to make a call. We need to do welfare checks. We need to make sure that people are all okay. Another thing that stands out for me is the free school meals. So again, round about October, it was huge in the press. Government made the announcement as well about free school meals. We've got 10,000 children on free school meals. So we launched a helping hand campaign, and we very quickly had to get vouchers to those that needed it. It is just plain and simple what needs to happen. Let's get the support out to them. So we stood up a helping hands team. We've got slicker at all of that now. So at Christmas we had digital vouchers, again giving people choice, and there's just been so much learning and learning on the hoof. You know, you have to kind of go with it, learn really quickly, tweak the system a little bit and move forward. But it has been, yeah, just a roller coaster coming through, and you've got the day job which needs to be done, as well as the emergency job. So it's been interesting. Do you want to just go on to the next slide, please, Helen? In reality, this is my life in a year. So it started off all nice and calmly, all fine. Obviously, absolutely lockdown, oh my God. The high five is that point where I just value those brilliant brains coming together and kind of going, what do we need? Let's just get it done. Some low points. I definitely have learned when you don't have a commute and you get up and you're really passionate about your job and you just get up and you have your breakfast at your desk, if you've not had time to get dressed properly, there's every opportunity that at 3 o'clock in the afternoon you're still going to be in your pajamas, because you just get too caught up in what you're doing. Somebody kindly dropped off a new computer at my door on said day in my pajamas, and I opened the door and just went, oh no. Oh, and of course it goes around. The gossip then went round, and everybody, I had to prove for weeks that I, you know, had got dressed that day. There are highs, really, really highs around you do something good. People are saying, the employee reps, as people come into the service, an employee rep meeting, I remember saying, I'm sorry the job's like this, you know, we will get slicker, we will get better, we will get a lot more information and defined roles. And one employee rep said, we just don't care. This is the most valued we feel, and they're making a difference every day. That to me is hugely significant. I couldn't work the way I do without people that are willing to work like that and be just as passionate about their jobs as I am. Anybody that knows me, I'm always cold in this house. There's millions of layers. I do have a hot water bottle at the moment as well. And yeah, lots of times where people are going, what's the answer? And I'm going, I'm not sure, we'll find out together. And I have taken my laptop to bed before. That's one low. I will not do it again. I was on a deadline. I can think of all sorts of excuses, but it's wrong. It's just plain wrong. So it's just about getting that balance right and being able to say help when you need to, and be able to say, let's just slow it down. Let's just think about it a little bit more strategically. Can we go to the next slide, please, Helen? My life is involved in data, so I constantly look at dashboards or the government advice, and I have got this dual role. So I've got building up a service that we know that the council wants, but actually the pandemic has come into my area as business as usual. So you're keeping a constant eye on what are the figures, where are we going, what's the direction, what's the vaccine rollout, where's the next piece coming, and everybody's in the same boat, but we have an awful lot of data behind us. So it's making sure that you're part of that, you're sharing that data and that insight as well. Go to the next slide. So in terms of what's in the service, when I first came to you, I was talking about the localism service in terms of community boards, devolution, everything really down on the arm of Katie McDonald. So the names in blue are just stars. They're the ones that are doing all the hard graft. They're the really critical people. And you can see the sheer volume of work that we've got there. So in terms of Katie's role, I know Katie's on the call, so she can introduce herself at the end, if that's okay, Katie. We've got community boards, and we'll come on to talk about those a little bit more. There's a community engagement team who are brilliant. They're tucked away and they do fantastic work. So again, it's working out who's in the service, how they complement each other, how we can really elevate and talk about them even more. Devolution, so it's assets of devolving assets to town and parish councils or community groups. That is so important to us. but you can see the sheer volume of work. We haven't been able to just quite get on the front foot of that. We want to, and the ambition's there. Assets of community value is another one as well, in terms of you just need to get the process bang on. So this is around, if a local pub is the real hub of a community, what's really important is that the community lists this as an official asset of community value. We hold the register. It's quite a technical piece that we would have to sign off and say, yes, this is officially on the register. When it becomes on the register, there's a moratorium where it can't be sold unless the community know about it. And again, this is what brings us all back to knowing our communities well, that whole spirit of localism. So that ambition still hasn't been lost. It's just looking at the detail of everything and making sure we're absolutely bang on. If we get that wrong, it's a huge cost, both for the council, the owner of the property, but also the community if we get that wrong too. Two critical partners, obviously, we've got a lottery team as well, Bucks Lottery. So we've had to streamline everything, really harmonise everything 5 into 1 and make sure that we've got a really slick system. Just wanted to talk about Jill Harding. So she's head of welfare. This was a team that we never knew we needed. And this has come from the pandemic, and it's not just been an emergency pandemic. It will go away soon, 8th of March, wouldn't it be great? This is with us for a long time. So this is where the Helping Hands scheme comes in, the support to shielding, which won't stop. We've got an emergency support team that was always there, but we need to make sure that we're strategically using the money well, and we're really focusing on who's our most vulnerable. Financial insecurity is a huge one for us. So again, Jill's service will be able to stop moving from emergency into more strategic operations. So I'm really looking forward to that. Community safety is the huge one for me. So Nathan hasn't started yet. I'm very much looking forward to him starting, because at the moment I'm having to line manage the team. Community safety is a biggie, and the reason why I bring it up here is because I think it's got so many connections to the voluntary sector that it's just not been talked about enough yet for me. Nathan is, so for those of you that may know, Elaine Jewell was holding the team for a little bit. She also had libraries and museums, and that's moved into different departments of the council. Community safety lands with me, and that is very serious statutory duties. You may have seen in the press about the domestic abuse bill. This is around, I could get a call to say they're doing a police operation, there's been a murder, that you've got 2 children on scene. This is really serious stuff. Community triggers, antisocial behaviour. Street wardens are fantastic. There's so many opportunities where I think that team can really do brilliant partnership engagement work. They do already, but I think it's important for a new council to be able to talk about it really well. Nathan was recruited, he is an assistant chief constable, so it's a great appointment for us. We had loads of people interested in that appointment, and I'm really delighted that he got the role. He's all about collaboration, so I'm sure that we can make connections through to him in his induction. Domestic homicide reviews, everything does come back. The more that I've spoken in a strategic place around the voluntary sector and the direction of travel, everything is coming back to the same trigger points, and so it's important that we're all talking about those and linking in together. Next slide, please. A little bit on Helping Hands. Again, we can circulate the slides if you like. I'm just aware of time, but it's interesting that people quite often say, what does the council do? Why do you need this Helping Hands? Just give a food voucher, isn't that the end of it? And it's really not. We are taking calls from everybody and it's really interesting. And what I've asked the team to do is share some of the stories, because we're seeing a new vulnerable. You can see on there we've got people that have never contacted the council or other agencies before, but they can see through various routes that you can get information about food, or you can get food parcel, or it could be that they can't get a food an online shop, and we can look at prioritising some of those online shopping channels. Some are really easy quick fixes, some really sadly are huge and shows just the impact and the far-reaching impact this is going to have, and the long-term impact this is going to have as well, and some of the really tough situations that people are living in. I know I don't need to tell anybody on the call about that. You've been living and breathing it for years. And it will be important, I think, for the council to be able to share this insight, share the connection, but more importantly, have a really measured step down plan. If we suddenly pull out, what does that mean? But actually we can't keep going in the space that we're going. So we need to have that measured step down plan, and how can we support around that, as well as making sure that every single council department is really connected into this as well. Next slide, please. Community boards have started their journey, and I always say that as the main point. Everyone's got their own minds about the community boards, and you can see from the roller coaster of a year that we've had that we just haven't been able to put the foundations into place that we would have done for such a huge rollout of that level of infrastructure. I like that we're doing it. I'm really passionate about it. I like the ultimate vision. I think we've got a way to go there, and we've got a journey to take. It's been good that we've started it. We've got 16 local community boards that are all thinking local. They're really passionate about their areas. What's probably, it's the infrastructure behind it all. So we've got 3 area teams. Each community board has a board coordinator. You can't have one person managing those. So we've got 3 teams that are managing them. You've got chairs of the council that are chairing those community boards. They've had to do it on the hoof as well. They didn't know the job profile. It's an awful lot of work for them. They're asking me all sorts of questions around governance and role profiles and what should we do, and we haven't got some of the answers. So naturally you get this organic approach, and there are elements of each board that I really like, and there are elements of each board that I'm not that keen on, that needs to kind of evolve, and I'm sure people would say themselves it needs to evolve. So we need to be able to take the learning. Now we're at this stage of after the elections, and now we know the elections are going ahead as well. That's really good, so we can focus on all of that. We need a really good restart. So Katie and I will be looking at how can we get the best restart to make sure that we still very firmly get the vision of the community boards that we know that we want. I think for those of you that were familiar with the local area forums, and I remember coming and saying what I thought about those local area forums last year, it's interesting because I think people gravitate to what they know, and what they know is laughs. And if we don't kind of have that stimulus and conversation and refresh, what you'll find is that people just steer back to what they know. It's really important that we get businesses, voluntary sector, we get all the partners around the table for those community boards. That's what will make a real difference. So the vision is still there. We know that, you know, we've still got tweaks to do. It's been lovely that we've been able to just get going on it. The community board coordinators came into a job not knowing what they were, and the most important thing for them has been that they're willing to collaborate. If I'm honest, I don't care what their background is. It's great that we've got all sorts of different ideas, different dynamics, different specialisms. What I have again really valued is that you've got 16 people and their managers that are willing to just put the heart in the right place. They're willing to make it work. They're willing to be flexible. They want to listen. They're not shutting people down. They want to do the best. What I'm struggling with at the moment is they're so passionate. They're doing too many hours. You know, we need to protect people as well. So it's about that containment and making sure we get the mechanics right so that people can put passion and energy into the areas where it's safe to do so. We'll go to the next slide, please. So board coordinators are new. I like the idea of the principles that we've got locality working. We've been able to see that the boards have reacted really quickly. So one of the other things on the timeline that stands out for me is the Buckingham floods. And again, just as soon as you think, Christmas, okay, all will be fine. I was on call at Christmas, so there was no drink on Christmas Day for me. Again, you just don't know what's coming. So Christmas Eve, we had huge floods in Buckingham, and you go into emergency cell mode again. What can we do? How can we help? Because we had the councillor, because we had the community board set up, the Buckingham Community Board, Buckingham Villages, very quickly, it was in a matter of hours, had set up a crisis fund just around the flood. That's on Christmas Eve. You're trying to sort out, you know, somebody's electric, and it's just making sure that you can do that community response. And the community response is great. and you don't want to stifle that. You don't want to put too much controls on it. That's what we've learned as well. So it's making sure that you've got systems that support what naturally is going on, as well as identify where those gaps are. So lots of opportunities. We're embracing digital with the boards. What I didn't like about the LAF meetings is that, if I'm really honest, is that when you go round, they're sometimes in drafty village halls. So you get, you know, just a handful of people going. What's been quite good about the community boards is that all of a sudden loads of people can join if they want to. There's a tipping point with that for me, because actually you just having 70 people in a meeting isn't that great. So it's making sure that we measure the right thing, that we don't lose sight of what works well. And as we move forward and people will retain some degree of virtual working, we need to be able to think, how does all of that model now fit together, and how can we maximise everything from there? We know from Durham that this is really hard to do. It's really hard in a pandemic year. So we know it'll take a couple of years to bed down. We can give you a lot more information about community boards if there's lots of questions there, but that's a biggie for us. Can we do the next slide, please? Community safety. So I've mentioned quite a lot about that already. It's just picking up on a few pieces that are in there for me. The Safer Buckinghamshire board and the 5 priorities in the plan. This is where I think there's lots of crossover with the voluntary sector, and I'd like to do a lot more conversations, I suppose, to be able to say, let's talk about, you can see the 5 priorities in the corner there, and I think there'll be lots of people really interested in wanting to be connected. Domestic abuse is a huge area that we need to focus on, and again, really lucky that the bill has given us some funding and some tight parameters around that, including looking at victims, looking at offenders. It's just a really interesting piece, as is the learning from the domestic homicide reviews as well. Channel and prevent. So I'm the chair of the prevent board, so it's about preventing extremism, and again, some of the projects and work there are fascinating, and I think the voluntary sector should just be part and parcel of that, and I don't know yet whether we have got that absolutely right. Is there more opportunities there? So I'd just like to explore that a lot more. We've got 3 local police areas, so we're working with 3 local police commanders. So again, it's really good to get the information through, and the insight, I think that goes back again to sharing insight and really bringing in those opportunities. Particularly opportunities for me would be around, as we move out of lockdown and you begin to look at office accommodation, where, not just with community safety, but just where are the opportunities to think differently or build back differently. So we just need to be far more creative about all of the work. So I like that community safety's come over. I think it fits well with the service, and I'm looking forward to understanding that all a lot more from a collaborative point of view. We go to the next slide, please. BCS Recovery Board, and again, you can see the different bits just make me light up. I really like the board model. We've been working in this way for a long time, but actually bringing it together as a board and seeing so many different aspects of the strategic approach that's needed, it's meant that you can really do some deep dives. I think we're at the beginning of that as well, but it's a model that I think will get us the traction that we need to see. So it's beginning to be able to look at taking a theme, really drilling into it. The strategic framework is a bit of a position statement, I suppose, to be able to say, look, we want to work together and we really value each other. That goes through to Cabinet on Tuesday, actually. It's been signed off by Cabinet then to say, hurrah. We did that in partnership with the BCS Recovery Board. So again, it all just feels far more collaborative, but the real work now happens because we're moving out of this emergency mode, moving more into what happens now, the so what. And what we don't want to do is just have endless conversations. So we need to move into, where do we get traction where we need it? Where do we slow down where we don't? And what's the strategic direction? For me, I'd quite like to see more money being channeled into bucks. And again, you need to have that collaborative approach around that. There's a ways and means in which we can really pull in and get more money into bucks, into the whole system. And how can we all support that? So for me, the board, and again, very happy to take questions on that. There are lots of people in the room that I know a part of that board, so it'll be interesting to hear your perspectives on it. For me, I think that's a really important piece going forward, and I'm really delighted at how the board have supported me, my whole team, but also I know some of the vision that people have got for that piece of work. We'll go to the next slide. This is the last one for me. So just in terms of the priorities, it's settling the team down. We're still in this emergency mode, and you've now got staff in place that are coming in. We need a really good culture within the teams. We need clear roles and responsibilities. We need that identity as a localities team ourselves, but we also need an identity around what's the council doing, what's the council's role around localities, where it's just firming everything up. Great that people have ideas, but it's just making it tighter now and developing a good culture. What's going to be important for me is the welfare of staff. People have worked long hours, and I think people get into a state of emergency, and it's about being able to kind of unravel that a little bit, make sure that people take some time off, they recover, they've got a really good understanding of the direction that we're all heading in. Elections huge. I'm looking forward to doing the inductions. Again, I remember when I spoke to you last year, I was saying all these great things. We could do joint inductions. It'd be really good, it'd be brilliant. And then obviously we had to do inductions online, and most councillors have been doing the role for years, so you didn't need to do an induction. Now I think we've got a reset in so many different ways, so we'll be able to do an induction where you'll have possibly brand new councillors for the first time. So that induction period for a councillor is really important, and I think we've got an opportunity to explain more about what the sector is about, more about the collaboration, what's important to all of us and our communities. Community boards are huge, as I've mentioned, and that restart will be really important. And Kate has already put in the chat bar, very happy to be contacted around that. We need to get that right. Volunteering is going to be huge going forward, but and I'm again very grateful for the volunteer matching service and how we can see the passion that's there, and you need to be able to channel people in really quickly. I think from my perspective of the council, again, it's that utilising the flexible working. So the council have always been very good at having volunteering hours. What we need to now do, we've got a really good opportunity to be able to say, before people go back to their way of working, use working in teams, working in this flexible way where somebody might have one day a week working from home, but that day a week is their day that they might go in supporting a school, supporting a charity, or can they go and be the treasurer? And it's just looking at all of the different roles and thinking, you've got an awful lot of employees. How can we make sure that we really get our volunteering policy to support the volunteering strategic direction that we want? In terms of grants, rental subsidies agreements is another one as well. So we'll obviously be doing a grants review, but the rental subsidies is a really big one for the council. Where have we got those subsidy agreements for peppercorn rent, and why, and how does that work? And making sure that we've got a really good system around that. Devolution, as I mentioned, I'd like to see us really ramp that up a notch. It's the same on all of the strategic partners board. The rural forum are fantastic, and again we've supported that. Karma is kindly holding that just because we know it's a brilliant forum, and again there's so many opportunities to take it forward when we've just got a bit of breathing space. So there's loads of partnership opportunities. We're just in this really delicate position, I think, of not over promising but actually making sure that we get the vision right. I think if I leave it there, I'm aware of time, so it's probably easier to leave it there, Helen, and then just take questions if that works as a format for you. I've whistle-stop tour through my whole life, but hopefully that made sense.
Thank you, Claire. Yeah, you've covered loads of ground there, and just reflecting on your opening remarks, I can certainly, see similarities and parallels in terms of, work and life boundaries. And I've been caught out with the whole pajama thing. And I am dressed today because I have appeared on one of these in my pajamas before because I completely lost track of time. So I think we've all been there. So thank you for your honest and open presentation. Martin and Felicity, I know that you've been doing a great job monitoring the chat for me. So can I ask Martin or Felicity to suggest who we go to first for questions?
Well, funny, we haven't had much through the chat. Do we want to open this to the floor? Don't be afraid to ask questions, guys. I think it's important.
I should have highlighted as well, Katie. I don't know, Katie, if you just want to sort of wave and say hello so that people know who you are.
Hello, yeah, really lovely to be here this morning, thank you. And just to kind of reiterate, I guess, what Claire said, I think it's a really exciting opportunity and a really exciting time at the moment, because we have got the opportunity to reset. And yeah, I only joined in, kind of the end of November, December, but I think it's a really special service, and we work with really special partners as well. And it's really been valuable to me to get to know you all. I was redeployed back at the beginning of the pandemic during lockdown. So I was part of that initial kind of madness that Claire described that we've all been through. It's been a tough year, but I think in terms of, for me, what we do in our service and how we work with the VCSE and the VCSE Recovery Board that Claire mentioned, there's a real opportunity for us, I think, in terms of how we support services and the VCSE and that kind of prevention space. And we, there's lots of opportunity how we do that. And I'm really keen for people to come and talk to me about the community boards and how we kind of make that improvement journey together as well. So I think Claire emphasised that we can't do that alone, and we need to work together. And I think in our service we really recognise that. So those strong partnerships are really key. So yeah, happy to take any questions today as well on the community boards and other areas.
So I'll crack a question off. Given that Boris has now defined the roadmap as such, do you think there'll be more preparations for us as organisations in the VCS strategy group and the council for next autumn and winter? Is there more thoughts about what we should be looking at and what we would do? In terms of not getting caught on the back foot. Everyone thinks we're going to be, June, we can all go on holidays, Spain's coming, tennis is coming, golf's coming, all the rest of it. But is there any long-term preparations being strategized by the executive? And
the director,
question from Graham Peart next time.
There's so Jane O'Grady is our Director of Public Health, and Jane is very hot on this. Jane has already sort of said this isn't going away. Don't think it's kind of like, oh, there we go. Not only have we got the impact this year, and that we'll see for a long time in terms of the cost, the mental health, or all of the impact of the pandemic, but you've got that winter planning every year. And how we've done winter planning before, again, I've worked for the council for about 4 years in terms of county council, so we'll quite often hear winter planning being told, and everyone goes, yeah, gritting, okay, blue. This takes it up a notch completely. So it wouldn't surprise me that Jane O'Grady will probably lead something around that winter planning piece, but she's already being very, very clear. We can't see this as next, it's done, it needs to be significant, and we will be seeing something around it every single year. So we'll take that back as to say, actually, those conversations are being wanted now. Can we have the collaborative sort of forums that we know works really well just to get those early thoughts moving? But we are going to be doing winter planning on a serious level every year, I think, and we've learned so much from doing the pandemic that we just need to be able to have stand-up places, whether that's very localized practice or key messages. It's being able to have those comms messages at a disposal, or be able to shift up the helping hands bit, or have a cohort. There's loads of lessons learned that I think need to be in that strategic framework, and I think we need to get there. But it's interesting that Jane O'Grady yesterday was kind of like winter planning, so I think it's coming.
I'd just add, Claire, as well, that the cells that existed haven't ever really gone away. I think Rachel Shimon often makes that point as well, doesn't she? They might not be as prominent to all of our work, but we've still got kind of like a vaccination cell, an emergency cell, around our care homes as well. So I know that, kind of the VC and charity sector are linked in there. So I don't think they'll ever go away for quite a long time as we're dealing with COVID recovery.
Do you find you're working a lot then, Katie, at ground zero with the 16?
We're linked in, Claire mentioned our amazing community engagement development team. So you'll know that in the south, there's quite a lot of activity going on with the South African surge and the testing. So and we've been planning that for weeks ago as well, in case that happened. And that's the type of thing that I'm kind of linked into a lateral flow testing group and with the community engagement development team. So all the time we are thinking, what if this happens? What if that happens? There is that planning in the background and sharing that with our community boards who are obviously linked in, checking on the Bucks online directory as well. And we've been making lots of calls to kind of charity and small community organisations to check they're okay, how are things going, how can we help? And then linking back to our community engagement development team. So yeah, we're trying to stay as kind of linked in as possible and to be there and ready if we're needed. And called up. So I mean, at the moment, I think things seem to be okay, but we know any time we could get a call. Yeah, to help.
Thank you. We have two questions. Graham Peart first and Marcella Heim second. Graham, over to you.
Thank you, Martin, and thank you, Claire. Very interesting presentation. I'm sure actually we'd have all been very happy if you continued on for some time further, because we all have so much to learn at the moment with the new situation. And I'm looking at this as, from one side as a councillor, and I sit on the North West Community Board and also on 2 other community boards on subcommittees, but also as a trustee of One Can Trust. So I'm looking at it from both sides. And it's been a really interesting situation. As you say, we didn't know what we were going into, but looking back now, I think some of the decisions that were taken just under a year ago, particularly with rolling out of emergency funding, that was handled very well because the community boards weren't there. So the council did it centrally. And actually I sat on the subcommittee that has looked at the efficiency and effectiveness of those emergency grants. And it was a really, really, really interesting time. We had a lot of meetings, and 100 odd people who were involved in that came before the committee, and that goes before Cabinet on Tuesday, and then it will be in the public domain. It's just well worth reading as to what actually happened county-wide. But I think we're still trying to find our way. And if I'm looking at it from the VCS sector for a moment, funding is we're not quite sure. And I'm at arm's length with applying for grants for One Can Trust. We have a trustee who's an accountant who actually does that, and he's very good at it. So what was decided was, because One Can Trust delivers food parcels across 8 different community boards, the food bank has put in 8 different, not different, but 8 identical applications, but for different sums of money, depending on how many food parcels across the boards. And that has totally confused the coordinators. It's in one sense quite amusing, but we do need, in a pleasant way, I don't mean this in a difficult way, but it's we do need to actually resolve those issues, because the community board boundaries don't necessarily follow the community boundaries, if that makes sense. For instance, Flackwell Heath is part of Beaconsfield, which really hasn't got that connection. And I sit on the Northwest Board, which is primarily, the main area is Risborough, but it also includes half of Downley, which is very Wickham-faced, whereas Risborough is very Aylesbury-faced. So we are trying to sort of, from the community, from the VCS sector, we're trying to sort these issues out and learn. And I have to say, the cooperation has been brilliant all round, and I think in both ways. And sitting on a community board, I too am confused, because I chair one of the subcommittees, and one of the things we were looking at was social isolation, particularly in older people, but younger people as well. And then it looked as if that was going to be tackled centrally by the Health and Wellbeing Board, and then it appears that it isn't. And these are the sorts of issues that we do need to work out. You know, is that a community board thing, or is that a central subject? And I think it is working pretty well, considering that all 5 councils were tipped into one pot, and then we didn't have the elections, and now we do have the elections. which will actually put an interesting slant on it, because I think probably about half of the councillors that are elected will be new. So I think that's, you know, and because everybody's on basically a new territory. So I think we've got lots of challenges, but I think speaking on behalf of the food bank, very grateful for the support we've received. Looking at it from a councillor's point of view, there's a lot of work to do. And I think if we can actually have a lot of dialogue, I mean, one of the issues I think that there was in the past, it was difficult to find out who was responsible for what. And I think if we can be really transparent as to which department it goes to, even if we don't like the answer, it's good to get an answer. And I think we've made a lot of progress on that. But thank you for this morning. I think it's been really useful.
Thank you, Graham. I'm conscious of time. Short questions from Marcella and then one from Chris White. So over to you first, Marcella.
Good morning, everyone. Hi, Claire. Nice to see you after a year. First of all, a little bit feedback about the community boards. I think they are great. I think they are a way to map the services so we don't do the same. I do think that you're right that it has to be a more strategic view from now on when we finish with the pandemic. So they can take a little bit of the responsibility of looking how they can connect the different volunteer services, as we are all doing the same, our part, and we don't have time to kind of do that mapping and connecting. So I am participating in 4 of them, of the 16, and my team is in other areas participating. I think Amy is doing a great job in the Aylesbury ones. So that is my feedback on that. Yes, I am with you in this part of your presentation when you were saying that there is more people that have never used the services as benefits and they don't know how to approach things like that. I think it's the same feedback that we have from Citizen Advice Bureaus, from the Job Centre, from other organizations that are dealing with that. I was wondering if it's anything at the moment that you are thinking for as a campaign or for us as a volunteer sector to help you to promote any kind of prevention, or so that people don't get to that point and they can access the services before they get to benefits. And also there is a lot of people that are volunteering at the moment because they are in furlough. But once they go back to work, we are going to lose those volunteers. So maybe it will be interesting if we can see that the people that is saving the money from going to work in London and getting their big incomes can start thinking about. So if it's a campaign also for the wealthy areas of Buckinghamshire to try to help those disadvantaged areas, because I think the gap is going to grow bigger in the middle class in Buckinghamshire once we reach the end of the furlough time in April.
I think there's loads of points in there, so I completely agree that that prevention piece is really important, and we've been speaking for quite a while. Those that will smile in terms of the VCS Recovery Board, we've been talking about financial insecurity for a while and kind of going that prevention piece is huge, and we need people to come together so that you see the whole spectrum, and also just have really good comms campaigns to be able to get together and be able to link in so that people can support themselves or ask for help early. And I know that Graham, Karen, there's loads of people that are coming up with great ideas that we just need to, again, it's moving into get traction on it, do it. When is it coming in together? How can we just get somebody in and do it? So we need a bit of the project support there to just pull the ideas together and just get them done. So that debt, we often talk about debt advisors, but it is that debt prevention. And I know that the Revs and Ben's team, there's somebody new that's come into that service, and they've got a really interesting way of looking at that debt prevention element. It's just again a little bit pressure thinking, just different, and working in the way that we know that we want to see, so that you can support people from a whole spectrum and be able to not just focus on those that do shout the loudest and know how to work the system. There'll be pockets still that we need to wrap around that extra bit of protection to and make sure that they get the support as well. Mapping, Jennifer will smile, we've been talking about mapping for ages as well. We need to be able to pinpoint where are the critical places and flex with those, where are the hotspots now, this week, next week, what's coming, and to be able to use the data a little bit more critically and think more quizzically, I think. So I agree with all your points.
I'm conscious of time, everybody. So there'll be 2 short questions. Chris Williams first, then Hannah Asquith. So if you wouldn't mind, guys, we've got 5 minutes before we go. And Chris Williams, if you would make the closing comments as well, please.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. Hugely impressive roll call of what you've been up to, Claire. It's come a long way since I was last involved in it. I'm particularly impressed with the community boards and have noticed, particularly in the northern part of the county, that reports of what's going on at the community boards are starting to appear in the local press under the parish council feedback. And I think that's a really good idea. But so what ideas have you got through the team to be able to encourage more reporting of what's going on at the community boards so that more people know what's going on, but also how to participate in the community boards themselves?
Okay, can I hold the answer for that, Claire? Hannah, your question, please. So you can do the
mine is very short. Good morning, everyone. I wondered how much money has been donated by the community boards in the first year and what the plans are, you know, giving levels moving forward.
Do you, Claire?
I'll try and do both of those really quickly. So in terms of the comms, I think we need to get a lot smarter about the comms. They are all publicly recorded, so they're put onto, they're like a webcast version on our council system, so you can go back and watch them if anyone's really desperate to watch them. I think we need to get better and slicker about the comms though. We've got press releases going out, but what I think some of the boards have got is an individual comms plan, so that it might be a chair's message, it might be local people being able to get involved in different bits. So we need to work through that. What we'll do, rather than me, because of time, giving a rambled answer, I think Katie, if we can pick up and just follow up with that and just explain some of the plans that we've got in the team, just circulate it through. And if others have got ideas, please just add to the mix and get in touch with Katie. And Hannah, in terms of your question, so the community boards, obviously they've had 3.9 million in terms of funding. There's a way you can spend that in a year. It just can't be done. And I'd worry if it was done as well, because it would have meant that it's on the wrong things. So far, that's looking at round about, we've definitely seen committed to be about 1 million, but it'll be over that, I think, by the time we move beyond our year-end processes. So it's been agreed that it's an unprecedented year. What that will do is that underspend will be ring-fenced and we'll move that through to next year. So it's not going to suddenly be snaffled away or lost, or more importantly, just used and frittered away on the wrong things. It's too important to do that. So we'll, you know, the money has been spent, which is great, but what we'll also be doing is looking at that ring fencing. How can we support? How can we really get some strategic use where the boards are really commissioning work, really driving it, working across boards together. It was set up quite organically, but I think there are some things that the team have got ideas around that we can support chairs in their new wave of working, so you don't just get money sort of dribbled around a little bit, and it makes it a bit easier to engage with, going back to Graham's point about getting together.
And just a quick clarification, is that a 3.9 million per year, and so you'll be rolling over the shortfall that wasn't spent this year to the extra 3.9 for next year? Lovely, thanks Claire.
Okay, folks, so, oh, sorry, Martin. I was just going to say that we have had a couple of last minute questions in the chat. We're not going to have time to address George's question and Paul live. However, we can take those offline and make sure that everybody, when they receive the PDF set of the PowerPoint slides, can see the answers to those questions. I'm sure Claire and Katie will be happy to answer those. So just to acknowledge those. Martin, over to you, and then to Chris to wrap up.
Yeah, Chris, if you wouldn't mind thanking the speakers, please.
Hey, thank you, Martin, and thank you everybody for participating. I'm sure there are lots of other questions that have been generated by that. Claire, a hugely impressive roll call of what's been going on. As you say, a real roller coaster of a year, and the council, to its credit, has actually stepped up and is punching above its weight, I think. Obviously the pandemic has been a disruptive influence, but in some ways there is a silver lining to that, because it has actually forced the 5 councils to work much more together, and you've been much more innovative than you would have been allowed to be otherwise. Pandemic is not going to go away. COVID is not going to go away. Winter pressures are not going to go away. It will be important for you and the teams to continue to maintain the close links that you've already developed with the voluntary sector, and to pick out those things that you will want to keep once the pandemic and the emergency stage is over. So thank you very much indeed for all of that. I'm hugely impressed, having been involved in the early stages of the unitary debate. It's come a huge way, much more than I would ever have expected. So thank you.
Lovely.